today on Soul Work for Moms. When I first started the show, I had to learn everything about podcasting from scratch, so I contacted a few people to see if they'd practice interviewing with me, with no intention of ever publishing the content. One of those interviews was with sex and relationship counselor Julie Jeske. Julie had such great things to say during a conversation, I can't justify leaving the file on the computer never to be heard, so I'm sharing it with you today. Like I said, it was one of my first interviews, so there are a couple of small technical issues, but it's a great conversation. Intimacy and sex is a difficult subject for many of us, even before we have children. Once motherhood enters the picture, it's a whole different ballgame. Today's expert interview is with Julie Jeske, sex and relationship counselor with a private practice in Portland, Oregon. Julie can help you increase intimacy, ignite passion, and deepen your connection to yourself and others. Julie says she especially loves to help women discover who they are sexually, how to embrace pleasure, and live lusciously. Julie also teaches the Human Sexuality class for the graduate program in counseling at Portland State University and is a frequent contributor to TV segments as well as publications both online and in print. She's a mom herself, and her energy, approachability, and general charm make it easy to talk to about difficult subjects. I know you're going to love her. Hear our conversation, including how to enter a giveaway for one of Julie's online programs right after this. Becoming a mother is life-changing. It brings intense happiness and joy, but let's be honest, for many of us, it can also introduce some heartache and suffering. I'm Michelle Duncan-Wilson, and this is the Soul Work for Moms podcast. As a mother, you have a beautifully unique ability to change the world through what you do. Mothering does not have to mean a life of suffering. What if those painful parts of your life are actually tools for your own transformation? I call it evolution through mothering. If you are ready to break through your vulnerabilities, this is the place for you. Welcome to Soul Work for Moms. All right, Julie. Hi, nice to see you. Nice to hear from you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
All right, so Julie, what is sex therapy?
So sex therapy is very similar to general therapy. The focus is just on sexuality, intimacy. If you were to look at one of my sessions and look at someone who does general therapy, they're talking about depression or anxiety or life transitions, it's going to look very similar. We don't do anything differently in the session. We're just talking about a different topic. Another thing that might be a little bit different is that I do tend to give people homework because we're not going to be doing any touching in my office. So if there are things for them to practice at home, if there are, sometimes I'll have people practice a different kind of touch, then I might give them something to do outside of the office as well.
Okay. So what are the most common issues then that you see mothers coming to you with?
I see a lot of mothers who feel like they have low desire. I see a lot of mothers whose partners feel like they have low desire. I see a lot of mothers who feel uncomfortable with the ways their bodies have changed. Yes. I see a lot of really tired moms who don't have the energy to show up for their partners the way that they used to. A lot of moms who feel distracted. And a lot of moms who are such amazing, loving moms that they're pouring so much of their energy into their children and maybe into their relationship. And if they're, working as well outside of the home into that too, that at the end of the day, they just feel depleted and they don't really have anything left for themselves.
Oh my gosh. So many of those things sound so familiar. And what do you think? There's so many changes that happen after you have a baby. Physical changes, emotional changes.
Absolutely.
The relationship itself changes.
Yes.
So maybe let's just start diving into physical changes. If you give birth, not only are there lots of physical changes that happen, they recommend not having sex for 6 weeks after giving birth, but just in general, your body changes quite often after having a baby. I think that when women, myself personally, my body changed in ways that I hadn't even anticipated. And that can translate into coming to a sexual relationship really differently, right?
Right. Right. Well, it changes in ways you can perceive visually, obviously, right? It's like your belly grows as you're carrying a baby. My baby was breech, so I had to have a cesarean. So I've got a scar like a big scar that I didn't have before, if you are giving birth vaginally, there might be tearing. There might be some kind of recovery that needs to take place there as well. The way you produce lubrication can be different. Your breasts feel different. If you've been breastfeeding, you have a different relationship with your breasts as well, Breastfeeding also creates less lubrication. It changes the amount of desire that you might feel in your body. So, and then hormonally too, your cycle has changed. And then we throw in lack of sleep too, which seems like separate from how your body is, but sleep is a function of your body, right? So then you have less energy. You might have less flexibility, more stiffness, more achiness. If you're breastfeeding or carrying your body's a little bit out of whack. There's so much that happens just in your body. We're not even talking about emotionally or relationally between you and your partner. So it's a huge change. And the change doesn't just start with giving birth. It starts during pregnancy. Some people are violently ill when they're pregnant. Some people have tons of desire and all they want is sex, then they have the baby and their partner's like, wait, what happened? I liked this version of you, You've had a hard time getting pregnant, or if you've had miscarriage, if there's been traumatic birth,
yeah, that's a lot.
Huge.
At this point, a lot of us listening already have had our children. Those changes have already happened.
Yeah.
What can we do to start to come to terms with those physical changes that are affecting us in the bedroom, but also outside of the bedroom? What do you recommend?
One of the things that you're helping people do is just have this conversation so that you know that you're not alone. I don't know about you, but in the middle of the night, when my daughter needs something and it's I'm exhausted. I feel so alone in those moments, right? No one else knows this experience. A lot of moms feel that way about it, especially sexuality, because we don't see mother and sexual being as something that relates with one another, right?
Yeah, talk about that. Society's view of mother
is very non-sexual. It's very, it's very, and I think part of the reason so many people still are surprised by or have their own judgment around breastfeeding in public, right, is because the breast is a very sexual thing, but moms aren't supposed to be sexual. There's this huge separation. It goes back to the Madonna whore thing, right? So it's super complicated. And so here I am as a mom. I'm exhausted. I might be, covered in spit up, or my boobs are leaking. I'm tired. I don't look like your idea of what a sexual being looks like. Our idea of a sexual woman is so specific too. She looks a certain way, she acts a certain way, she talks a certain way, and that is not how most of the women I know look, right? It's a very specific thing. And so if I'm feeling less than that, I'm in my yoga pants, I'm in my sweatpants, I'm tired, I feel so removed from my sexuality.
It's like society expects you to choose one or the other. You either are very sexual, very sensual, or you're a mother. And if you are a mother, the second that you portray yourself as having sexual needs, sexual desires, then society wants to call you a bad mom.
Right. It makes people really uncomfortable. So much so that I see women pack away their sexuality, right? It's like they fold it up and kind of put it away. Not just new moms, people who are mothers who are in the workplace too. If you work in an environment where there are a lot of men, you may pack your sexuality away because you don't want to be perceived as flirtatious. If you work, this is interesting in as a massage therapist where you're touching people all day, you have to pack away your sexuality because you don't want to give the wrong idea. If you're a teacher, ooh, you better pack away your sexuality because you don't want to have people think that you're going to be sexual with children, right? So it's like we're constantly splitting ourselves. And I think moms do this a ton, but especially around the ideas of nurturing, loving, caretaking mama and sexual being, you know?
What do you think that does to our children when we are packing that away?
Yeah, it teaches them that like good moms are not sexual, right? Or that sexual people can't be good moms. And here's the thing. There are, of course, boundaries around how sexual you are around your children, right? But we take this boundary so far. I think in our culture, the American culture in particular, we're very all or nothing with things, right? You either do this or you don't do this. And so I ask all my clients, all my adult clients, what did you learn about sex growing up? And they will tell me, what did you learn from your parents' relationship growing up? And more often than not, I hear disappointment from people who witnessed their parents not connecting at all in an intimate way. It's very rare that I hear someone say, I felt like my parents were inappropriate in terms of how much I saw them kissing, right?
Right, but I think that that's the fear of a parent. I know that's my fear all the time. If my children are home and I know that they're asleep when I'm in the bedroom, that is going on in the back of my mind. Can my kids hear me?
Yeah,
right?
So I have people that I work with who won't have sex when their children are in the house, even though they have a lock on their door. Like it's so, I think moms, because the majority of us are great multitaskers, like that's a feminine quality, beautiful for mothering. So important to be able to multitask. The worst when it comes to sex, because you are trying to be there with your partner and you hear, oh my gosh, I heard a creak on the stairs. Is one of my kids getting out of bed? Did I turn off the oven? I'm not sure if I turned off the oven. What about tomorrow? What's going to happen when I see so-and-so at,
and men don't seem to have that problem.
They have this beautiful ability to focus, which is so lovely when it comes to sex and so infuriating when it comes to trying to have a conversation when they're doing something else, right? It's like there's both of these things are blessings and really frustrating in other places, because if you're like me, I can be sending an email, watching something on TV, and carrying on a conversation with someone at the same time, right? Because of that multitasking. Serves in some areas, but not in others. Can I say one more thing about moms and sexuality? Please. In terms of of one of the things that makes it really difficult is that there's this therapist and author, Esther Perel. She does some TED Talks, and she's written some books, and she talks about how neediness is often the antithesis to sexual desire, and that there's it serves.
Say that again. Neediness is the antithesis.
It's it's the biggest turn off. If someone's really needy, we don't want to desire them, right? And it really serves us as parents. Like, you don't want to desire your child, right? It's great that they need me. That's my role with them. When it comes up in our relationships, so it's like if I'm spending all day taking care of this little person or these little people, and then my adult person is needing on me, it often turns a lot of moms off. They feel really expended and depleted already.
I have had that conversation with so many of my girlfriends. Yeah. And what is it that changes? Does the partner change that they suddenly feel needy, or are we interpreting their desire?
That's a great question. I think it's probably a little bit of both. Yeah. It depends on the relationship. It depends on how you're showing up, right? Sometimes what happens is in a two-person partnership, all your energy is going toward each other, right? And you bring another person in, potentially more people in, that energy is being separated. And as a mom who leans towards attachment to mama-ing, I can understand how someone else might feel a little left out when I'm putting a lot of focus on this little person. So it's very likely that the mom is putting her energy less on her partner, and sometimes that's not the case, and the partner's got their own stuff they need to be working through potentially and are wanting a lot more,
And I think that this is when that portal or that door presents itself, that each of you in the relationship can really
Absolutely.
grow, right?
Absolutely. You have an opportunity to each work on self-soothing, which is not something we focus on in relationship in our culture. We're very, very, very focused on the idealized romantic other, right? This person who's going to meet all my needs. The you will complete me thing, right? And so,
Yes, that is such a setup for
absolutely.
failure.
And so then I've got all these needs, and if you can't help me meet them, I feel like you're letting me down. But the truth is, just like we want our children to learn to self-soothe, right? There's a degree. Like, you're not going to want, your child's not going to be crying in the corner for hours, and you're just going to be like, learn to self-soothe. Like, that's not healthy. The same with your partner. If they're really struggling, like, be there for them. But there's a degree to which, like, if my feelings are hurt, you're not paying attention to me, I can either calmly let you know, I can ask for what I need, or I can see if there's a way for me to get my needs met on my own, right? And there's a continuum for all of this. Like, there's a continuum for neediness, like someone who's super needy and someone who refuses to need anything, and there's a continuum for how we connect. And the challenging piece, and the thing I tell all of my couples that I work with who are wanting to eventually have children, is this is the bummer. This is the thing that I wish was not true. But 80% of couples report less relationship satisfaction after they have a child. 80% of couples.
Wow.
So it's like, that stinks. It stinks. It does mean that 20% of couples don't. So there's the possibility, right? But what it also means is, in order to be part of that 20% or change that percentage, we have to show up and work. I don't actually like to use the word work. I like to say we have to put energy or attention into our relationship, just like we do in all areas of our lives. So it's challenging, though, because we have less energy, too. We're exhausted.
So if you are a mom and you just know that something just doesn't feel right in the relationship around sexuality and intimacy, I am just hearing that there are a million things that can be,
and often it's like a combination of things. So it's really complicated to change it on your own, because it could be hormonal, it could be body image, it could be relationship stuff, it could be shame is coming up all of a sudden. Shame is so huge, and you might not have had shame before. Maybe you do now as a mom. It could be fear of what you're going to do to your children if they, hear you or see you. It's like all of these different things. So one thing that's important is to know you're not alone in this, that so many other women are experiencing this. And then sometimes you're going to need to get some support around it.
Julie has several online classes that you can take in the comfort of your own home on your own schedule. Classes with names like You Don't Have to Be a Sexy Tiger, Discover Your Sexual Self. Julie says this class is for you if you are tired of trying to fit someone else's idea of sexy. If you feel like you aren't sexy at all because you don't match up with what sexy is supposed to look like. If you are embarrassed or shy about sex, or if your partner complains that you have low desire or no interest in sex. Other classes include Woman is a River, Transforming Your Sexual Mythology, Shower Yourself with Love, an entire month dedicated to you, Shower Your Partner with Love, The Pleasure Project, and Releasing Shame, Embracing Pleasure. Julie's online classes are very affordable, with prices ranging from around $25 to $75. Visit juliejeske.com for more information, and be sure to listen through to the end to find out how you can enter to win one of Julie's classes. For the mothers who maybe are feeling that lack of desire and maybe are just shut down completely and are feeling like, you know what, maybe that part of my life is just over. What do we miss out on, aside from just a physical pleasure sensation? What do we miss out on when we are just shutting ourselves down sexually?
I think what you're saying is great. You're missing out on pleasure, not just your partner's pleasure, your own pleasure. And you're missing out on a level of intimacy and vulnerability. It's like, vulnerability and intimacy, I think it's changing. The work of Brené Brown is really changing how we view vulnerability, which is so beautiful, right? In the past, and for a lot of people still, vulnerability is weakness. It's like you're a puddle on the floor. It's embarrassing. But the truth is, in deep relationship, vulnerability and intimacy is like, I trust you so much that I'm going to let you see the parts of me that I normally don't show other people. And then the response to that is, I love you so much for showing that to me. We're going to connect on this different level. So being able to say, baby, like, look, I don't love my body right now. I feel embarrassed. My belly's mushy. My boobs are like flatter, or sad, whatever happens, right? Like I feel, I'm just I'm not feeling myself. And so I'm just putting that out there. I don't feel desire the way that I used to. I still love you and I'm still committed to our relationship. And I need us to find a way to work on this together, to show up together, is so different than faking it and then resenting your partner, or just like going like, we'll just do it for you. I mean, I hear stories where their partner will say things like, just do it, but hurry up. It's like, that doesn't foster connection.
Right. No, you both feel that. That's not really connection.
There's
right?
always going to be a time where someone shows up for their partner sexually when their partner wants it more than they do. Just like you would for anything. Just like your partner would go to a craft bazaar or something that they don't want to, or a play, or it's like, or you'd go to whatever, a family event that's theirs. Like, we do things for each other in relationship. That's okay. But to constantly be showing up for sex for the other person will create resentment eventually. And so my wish is, how can we help you foster sensuality, pleasure, passion, desire within yourself, not just in relationship to another person?
And what is the difference, in your opinion, between sexuality and sensuality?
I love that. Sensuality, for me, purely refers to the five senses, okay? So it's like, what am I seeing, tasting, smelling, hearing, feeling, touching, right? And so sensuality is all around us. The way my clothes feel against my fingers or against my skin, the way my coffee tastes in the morning. When I take a shower, am I like really letting the water like touch my body? Am I like smelling my shower gel as I'm lathering up? Or am I going through the motions and totally disconnected? Now, sex can be very sensual, right? There's all sorts of things you're seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, right? It's like, it is a very sensual experience, but sensuality happens outside of sex as well. My belief is that sensuality can be a very beautiful bridge to sexuality. So if you're focusing on sensual touch, you're more in your body, you're more present. When you're more in your body and more present, you have a better idea of what actually feels good. When you know what feels good, you know what you want more of. When you know what you want more of, you can connect on that. And so then you're showing up in more of a present place rather than just going through the motions. So I love it if we can focus on and here's the thing too. I'm so glad you asked about sensuality, because this is great for moms too. Kids are highly sensual beings. They can't walk outside. They notice the rain on their faces. They want to stick their fingers in the goop. They want to splash in the mud puddles. My daughter loves to wash her hands and get all slippery and look at the bubbles. It's like, they notice the colors. They notice the taste. They won't eat certain things because of textures. Like, they're so plugged into their senses. What's that sound, Mama? Did you hear that? Oh my goodness, it's an airplane. Like, they are in their senses. So it's a beautiful way for you to be able to connect to your senses by practicing it with your kid. Now remember, sensuality is not sexuality. So you're not doing anything sexual with your child. You're finger painting. You're playing play. You're like making a meal together. You're feeling the sun on your face. The more you're in your senses, the easier it is to bring that to sexuality. It's also connected to curiosity. Like, I think some of the best sex is when we show up, we want to be present, we want to feel our senses, we want to be curious. What am I experiencing right now? Rather than going through the motions or playing it out like, oh, this is going to be another disappointing thing, or, kids bring curiosity too. So who we are as mothers and how we witness our little beings in the world, they're coming from, remember we talked about packing away who I am as a sexual person. They're coming from a very whole and complete self. They're not separating who they are as their little playmates with, who they are as a playmate, who they are as a child, who they are as a sibling, who they are as whatever gender they feel like, it's like they are holistic in their approach to life. They can, my daughter loves bugs and tutus. She doesn't have to separate those two things, it's like they get to be all of her. So if I was to show up as a mama, as a sexual being, as a sex therapist, as someone who loves to travel, as a loving daughter, as a sibling, as a good friend, like all of those are connected. As a business owner, like all of that is connected.
Can we make progress if our partner is shut down?
Yes. Here's the tricky part. You can make progress. Your relationship might not be able to keep up with you.
And do you find that even when a partner sometimes maybe isn't open at first, as they see someone growing and opening, that can spark a desire to grow?
Absolutely. And I also see that sometimes someone might interpret their partner as being shut down, but they're actually not. They're afraid, they've been rejected, they're protecting themselves to some degree. And when their partner shows up and is like, okay, here, I'm trying this new thing, I'm being vulnerable, I'm being open-hearted, I'm leading with love, here I am, that person can open up too, So it's very inspiring. I mean, you've seen it with other people in your life, like when someone is very passionate about exercise or art or a new career, like that reaches us. So it will reach your partner too. I think that we have, again, in our culture, this idea that we need a person not only to complete us, but to help us know who we are sexually. This is a very, at least maybe it's my generation. I don't know if the younger generations are experiencing this as much, but it's like the Sleeping Beauty syndrome. I cannot tell you how many women are like, I just want to be with a person who can unlock all my sexual secrets and potentials. I want them to show me the sexual world. They're really putting that on another person. And so what I'm asking people is, can you wake yourself up and then give that to the person that you want to give it to? Can you be the person who opens yourself up to your true sexual potential rather than sitting back and being passive in that experience and putting pressure on the other person?
What about the single mamas out there?
I say that, first of all, there's a time and place for everything. And so it's okay, just like it is after you have a baby and your body is recovering, or if you're grieving the loss of someone you love, or you're going through stress, or you are worried about losing your home. There are times in your life where it is more than okay to be a little disconnected from your sexuality. That's okay. The danger is when we kind of get used to that. It's like the habit, right? Now I'm so used to being disconnected, it feels scary to try to reconnect. And as a single person, we can absolutely connect to our sexuality. You don't need another person to be sexual. And so here's a place where sensuality.
You don't need another person to be sexual.
Yes.
Okay. I don't think a lot of people would have normally thought that on their own.
Well, here's the role of masturbation, which a lot of women are not masturbators. Is that, I don't know if that's if the proper
it is now. Yeah.
I think even if you didn't grow up in a culture where there was shame around it, there's this implicit idea that it's okay if little boys do it, but it's not okay if little girls do it, right? And so a lot of women don't grow up with the experience of touching themselves. The best way to know your body and know what feels good is to do it yourself. Then you don't have that person who you're worried about actually asking the thing you really want from, or you're worried they're going to be frustrated if it takes a long time, or all of the things, it's just about you. So that's one way to be sexual. Sexuality is not just an act, though. It's not just about the act of sex. It's what turns you on. It's what excites you. It's what connects you to your body. There are elements of sexuality that are about sensuality, about pleasure. So you can connect to all of these other things and still feel relatively rooted in your body sexually. I think just like there's a difference between sensuality and sexuality, there's a difference between sexuality and sexiness. And sometimes as moms, we don't feel sexy, so then we don't feel like we're sexual. But I could be covered in spit up and breastfeeding and have been up for 12 hours and still be a sexual person. Doesn't mean I'm having sex, but that's my essence. Just like I'm always a daughter. Even if my parents are no longer around, I'm still a daughter. I am always a sexual being, whether I'm having sex or not. It depends on what kind of a sexual being you want to be. Do you want to be a sexual being who just doesn't practice sex? Okay. Do you want to be a sexual being who focuses on sensuality? Okay. Do you want to be a sexual being who reads erotica and touches herself? Great. You get to decide. But it's always a part of you unless you close that part off.
You're a mom. So were you a sex therapist before you had your daughter?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So what was the biggest surprise for you after becoming a mom? You had been dealing with this, instructing people, helping people. What was the biggest, what just happened after you became a mom?
Yeah. I think for me, the recovery from my cesarean was like really, really surprising, because I knew about all of the different ways that your body changes. And I knew, like, I think people talk about if you give birth vaginally, like your sexual experience really changes, but they don't talk about it if you have a cesarean. So like and they're cutting through like layers and layers of things. So it's like orgasm changes, the way penetration feels changes, like it's surprised. So it was very surprising and very vulnerable. Like it was a very like, this is like a new thing. And so I'm trying to show up in a new way, which is something I'm constantly talking with people about, right? But it brings it home, just like illness or injury or aging does. Like we learn about sex from a young age. Typically we start practice, and young age meaning like maybe teenager, like sometimes younger, but like people start practicing sex at, in their teens or sometimes maybe early 20s, right? And then we have this ideal of that's what sex is like, right? We don't, and if you watch porn, it's usually younger people. Like we don't have this idea that our bodies change over time. And so for me, the biggest thing was like, wow, it changed in ways I didn't think it would, in ways I wasn't quite prepared for. And it wasn't bad, but I had to like show up a little bit differently, and I had to kind of ask for things differently, and move slower sometimes, which is surprising, What
are you most proud of in your work?
One thing that's really hard about my work is there's a lot of it I can't talk about, right? Because of confidentiality. I've had some really amazing, amazing, amazing experiences and feedback from people. And I think the things that make me most proud are when people who feel like they just have lost hope and they don't really know how to do this, how they could possibly connect. I mean, I've had people who haven't had sex in years come to me, and in a relationship, a loving, adoring relationship. They haven't had sex with each other in years. Come to me, and in a non-scary, non-traumatic way, they start having sex again. They like rediscover that part of themselves, right? I have people who feel like that they just don't know. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to love themselves. That's the thing that makes me most proud. Sex is awesome. I think it's such a great thing. But like that, like deeper, like love and acceptance, like when that happens, it's also really, as a mom, it's really special for me when people who have had a hard time getting pregnant or who thought they might not be together to be pregnant end up having children. And I've had the experience of them bringing their child to me and be like, look, you helped us with this. Like that is pretty powerful. It is pretty powerful.
And I'm going to close with this question. What is the one thing that you would hope that mothers could realize for themselves?
That you are worthy of pleasure. And that pleasure isn't just about sex. The definition of pleasure is something that feels good or gives you a feeling of satisfaction and enjoyment. And so the more you allow yourself to enjoy your life, all of it, even the parenting part, even the non-parenting part, even the work part, even the hard part, if you can find pockets of joy and pleasure in it, it's easy to say as a mom, like it's better for your kids, which it truly is, but it's better for you. And you don't have to do something just because it's good for your kids. You get to do it because it feels good to you.
And that is our soul work action step for this week. Create 3 moments of pleasure and sensuality for yourself every day this week. It can be as big or as small as you like. Maybe walk through the grass barefoot with your children, or light your favorite candle during the day. Maybe make some pizza dough and take time to enjoy the process of kneading the dough. Start to incorporate more moments of pleasure for yourself as a gateway to desiring the pleasure and sensuality of intimacy with your partner. Julie has offered one lucky listener her 30-day pleasure project course. To enter the giveaway, visit Soulwork for Moms on Instagram, Facebook, or on the blog and leave a comment under today's episode post on what your biggest takeaway was from today. You can comment at all 3 places to have 3 chances to win. The contest is open until Thursday night, and I'll announce the winner on the blog on Friday. So many thanks to Julie for sharing her wisdom with us today. This is a huge topic, and we'll have Julie on again to talk more. But if this is an area that you are struggling with, I encourage you to check out the resources on her website, juliejeske.com. There's a link in the show notes as well. That's where you'll also find today's soul worksheet tailored to all the things Julie was talking about today, waiting for you for free on soulworkformoms.com. You can print one off and put it in a binder or save it to a file on your desktop to assist you in doing your own personal soul work. Let me remind you that you matter. Your role as a mother is so important that I believe you can truly change the world. When you answer your soul's calling to break through your vulnerabilities to let your whole beautiful self shine through, you heal yourself, you heal your children, and you heal the world. That is evolution through mothering. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.